Hello, I'm Ronnie Eldridge. Welcome to Keeping Relevant. I first encountered the city's need for an enlightened child welfare system in 1969. Much has changed since then, thank goodness, but it still requires major efforts to develop new public policies or to respond to developing challenges. I'd like to talk about this today, and I'm especially happy to do that with Ronald Richter, whose broad experience and devotion is unsurpassed. A former legal aid lawyer, he's also been a New York City family court judge. He's been commissioner of New York City's Administration for Children's Services, and now he is the CEO and executive director of JCCA, a nonprofit, a superlative one, that provides special services to over 17,000 children and families every year. Welcome.
Thank you.
In 1969, I was working with Mayor John Lindsay. That's how I started. And that was when Spofford was a mess. I was appalled at what was.
I had clients at Spofford when I was a lawyer for legal aid in the Bronx.
And now it's going to be a housing project.
Apparently, yeah.
That's so crazy. I actually got, and I don't remember if it was Oneida or Zarega, but I got it closed.
Okay.
But those are two other places for they were for juvenile delinquents, I think.
I think so.
Yeah. These are classifications that we've always had. In the days that I first encountered it, the idea was always to take the children immediately out of the family, especially when there was any violence in the family. Nowadays, totally different. Right?
Very different.
There were over 50,000 children in detention at the time I started, and I think now they're like 9,000.
When I started, actually, there were, I'm going to say 1990-ish, there were almost 50,000 children in the foster care system, and today there are fewer than 7,000.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a result of public policy changes and a much better understanding of the impact of removal and how difficult it is to return children.
It's stunning, really.
It is. It's and we were talking earlier. It really did start, I think, with Commissioner Scapetta, who was a foster child himself, and became much more focused on the professionalization of the public child welfare system.
And an understanding of what it did. It wasn't protecting anybody.
Yep.
Yeah. So now, JCCA is one of how many organizations that are involved with children who are somehow involved in cases that may come out of family court or police?
So we're one of about 20 foster care agencies in the city. That's down from more than double that number when I started in the early 90s. And we have upwards of 50 preventive agencies. Some do both, like JCCA, but it's probably about 50 agencies in the city like JCCA that are providing services for families.
And you exist with funds from where?
So we are funded primarily by the city's Administration for Children's Services, which pays for preventive services and foster care and residential services in New York City. We are also an agency that provides a good deal of behavioral health supports for families, and that is funded by either the city's Department of Health and Mental Hygiene or the state's Office of Mental Health.
So do all of the children and families that you're involved with come out of the family court system?
The children that are placed in foster care come out of the family court system. So the family court has to approve a removal and endorse placements.
That's for foster care.
That's for foster care.
How do they come to your agency's attention?
So those kids are actually referred from ACS directly. So, and JCCA serves a number of counties north of the 5 boroughs. So we do a lot of work with Westchester. We have relationship with Rockland and a number of counties, Suffolk, Nassau to our east. And the cases come by the county. So it is state overseen system, but a county-driven system. So each county has a what we call a social services district, and that district is responsible for receiving calls from the state of New York through the State Central Registry of Abuse and Maltreatment. And then if ACS finds that a child is so deep end or their family has so many issues that there must be a removal, JCCA would be one of the agencies that receives the child upon the court's removal.
And all of this has the approval of all kinds of advocates.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So in family court, children are represented, parents are represented, and obviously the city is represented. Mm-hmm. So it's a three-party proceeding.
Mm-hmm. And is this network going to be able to continue in the future with all the flows of money and everything else? Do we get concerned about this?
So we get concerned primarily because all of the children in the foster care system and many of their families are dependent on Medicaid. And Medicaid is required in order to access services related to behavioral health in New York. And so if you are a child in foster care and you have parents that need supports and Medicaid is cut dramatically, it will affect our ability to move kids swiftly out of foster care. So we are very concerned about Medicaid cuts.
And it will also affect the providers of the service.
Absolutely.
It's such an unbelievable thing. Do we see a reduction in prison population and in other places that historically we always felt these kids would land up?
So there is absolutely truth to the notion that if a child is in foster care, they have a greater likelihood of touching the criminal justice system. It is, in my view, largely a function of more than foster care. So often I think the narrative is, oh, the kid was in foster care, so there's a greater likelihood they'll go to prison. I think it's really important to look at who comes into foster care. So you mentioned the dramatic reduction in children that are coming into foster care, and those kids today are really challenged. So they're wonderful, and I've spent my life working with them, but kids who come into foster care very often have never had dental care. And that is not an exaggeration. They have often never been to a dentist. They've had inadequate medical care. They are often from families that struggle with family violence, with parents who are medicating themselves because they have serious emotional challenges. And so the kids that end up in foster care today are what we consider very deep end. And so what's happened to them before they come into foster care certainly contributes to the trajectory, and we are doing enormous amounts of work to prevent that trajectory. The city and organizations like JCCA are investing in young people when they're 14 and 15 to ensure that they have coaches, to ensure that they have life skills, that they understand how to manage money. We do a lot of work at JCCA around helping young people develop job skills and an understanding of, what is college and how do you get there and what can it offer you, and making sure that we leverage for them all the opportunities there are for education supports, which I think New York should be proud. We do quite a bit.
Do we call the people who are helping them caseworkers? What do we call them?
So every kid has a case planner. Which is a caseworker,
I like
basically.
that better, yes.
And many young people also have a sociotherapist, and of course they have a lawyer. That's not JCCA, but
that's
usually
because
the
they've
legal
come
aids.
out of the court and they had to have a lawyer.
That's right.
Right. So what about the kids who are not the PINS kids? Is there such a thing as a PINS?
There is.
A person in need of supervision.
That is correct. I'm very proud that when I was at ACS, we made enormous progress on reducing PINS filings by offering parents what we call evidence-based programs. And so a parent shows up in court wanting their kid placed.
So this is a parent originated.
That is correct.
I got it.
That's who, a school official can also
Oh, so
originate a PINS case, but it's almost always parents. And they're really generally parents that are at their wits' end because they haven't been able to find what they need to help them manage a kid who can be, 14, 15, 16-year-old, who can be really challenging.
Right.
And so
they have their own problems, most likely.
absolutely, and very often younger children that they're concerned about. They don't want the older kid to set up the young kid for failure. So the city invested under the Bloomberg administration in what we call evidence-based models, which are all about focusing on family functioning. One of the models is called functional family therapy. And the goal is to elevate the parent's executive function, to help that parent understand that they're in control and give them tools to do that. The work is done at the family's kitchen table. And the young person is very much present because they know that if they're not, there could be consequences. And so it's an engagement that we have found in New York and really around the country really prevents the need for PINS kids to get placed.
It's really that's
progress.
Yes, wonderful. But let's just go over again how a parent gets to this point. How do they find you?
So a parent goes to the court very frequently, but at court they're not filing a petition initially. They're going through a city agency that's going to refer them to services. And those services today include, for PINS kids, evidence-based models. So they may go to court, but they're redirected to the probation department, to children's services, to places that will refer them to organizations like JCCA.
And the family then really absorbs and depends on that case planner. I mean,
that's true.
It's
in the case of evidence-based models, it's often a licensed social worker.
And how often is it financial poverty? How often are people who are
So this is
struggling?
a big question in child welfare today. There are many folks who think that if we would provide concrete supports, right, basic minimum income, assurance of health care, food support, rent support, that we wouldn't have child neglect. I am not a proponent of that position. I think there are, and I think there are, as a matter of fact, the majority of poor people in New York City have no contact with the family court or with child services. So I think there's some myth. Now, that's not to say that when a parent is so stressed out because they can't afford medicine, because they can't afford food, rent, that it's going to stress them out to the point where maybe their child becomes chronically neglected or neglected. That's true. But I don't think that our focus should necessarily, in children's services, be on those concrete supports. I firmly believe that our Child Protective Agency is there to protect the kids, also not a completely popular view these days, and that there are other city agencies, from the Department of Education to our healthcare system, to the Department of Social Services, to the Department of Youth and Community Development, that are all there to ensure that children do not need to touch the child welfare system. Unfortunately, a lot of attention goes to the child welfare system because
too much attention.
Too much attention.
Something goes wrong and it's
ACS or it's JCCA. And at the end of the day, had there been more economic opportunity in neighborhoods, more economic development, more investments in the 10 communities that most of our foster kids come to, we probably wouldn't have as many kids that come to our attention. Right. And interestingly, in my entire career, we've had about the same number of calls to the state about kids in the city. So it's about 60,000 calls a year alleging that a child is at risk. And we are now seeing an indication rate, meaning we find that the child may be at risk, in about 25% of those cases. And a tiny number of that 25% end up in foster care. Tiny.
So what you're really saying is, we know the major causes. It's education, housing, jobs, and less stress for in a way.
Right. I mean, that's often, those are all,
Right.
the lack of those things are often contributing to a parent's inability to
provide.
protect their
Right.
child.
I mean, and not $400. Here's an extra $400 for you.
No, you know.
I mean, what is that going to do?
First of all, I think any amount of money can help people, of course. But there are, in the kids that we see in foster care today, there are far deeper issues. And sometimes that's because it's been chronic under-resourced families, chronically under-resourced families. And it's true that it's not easy to reach out for help. But
No.
it's not. But I also applaud the majority of people who are poor who seem to manage. And that's, a controversial thing to say, but I do think the government needs a child protective function.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we've worked hard to get it better.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot work left to do. I'll introduce the concept that there's a disproportionate representation of children who are Black in our foster care
Mm-hmm.
system. That's a problem.
Mm-hmm.
The same neighborhoods that are under-resourced and that need economic development are primarily Black neighborhoods and neighborhoods where Latino people live. And we need to figure out how to go far upstream with families in order to prevent some kids.
Right. From really being victimized by the whole thing.
Right.
So I've heard you talk recently about the impact of social media, these phones that everybody has and that they're always on, that are still confounding to me because I don't like it all. But it's basically changed our whole culture.
Completely.
Yeah.
I mean, and we did just pass a law in New York, which I did not think was going to pass, that is going to limit access to social media in school,
Yeah.
which makes a lot of sense.
Absolutely.
I think it's very hard for parents, particularly parents who were raising their children during the pandemic, to reverse what happened then, including me. I'm a parent of a 15-year-old who was in 4th grade when the pandemic hit. And it was really her only way to engage with her friends. She was sequestered like other kids for months. And parents became a lot more lenient because it was a very scary time. So I think that is an additional challenge with social media for this generation.
It's an unbelievable thing. It's changed the whole world. I mean, it's the instantaneous results from it, the misinformation, the worry.
Absolutely.
And,
Absolutely.
And the way it's used sometimes in such a negative way.
Absolutely. And the algorithms that are introduced and that direct children to things that are really not in their best interests, and the inability of parents to really control it as much as we would like them to. I think that is why we're seeing increased suicidality among adolescent boys and girls. I think it's why we're having far more depression and anxiety among our young people.
But aren't we having that with everybody?
Yeah. I mean, my focus is generally children,
Yeah,
but
right.
yes, I do think I think that the social media is affecting all of us.
Right.
I mean, I think that the social isolation of the pandemic set up some really bad habits.
It's like a sledgehammer that
Yeah,
came.
exactly.
Yeah. And how many cases did it interrupt? I mean, how did you work with the families?
Oh my gosh, it was very difficult. I was so impressed by JCCA's efforts. I mean, we really transitioned to remote connections, right? Virtual meetings with families. And in child welfare, that can be very frightening because it's very difficult to assess risk remotely or virtually. And so our workforce went out there, and particularly in cases that were preventive and foster care cases, you know, we had to gear up and our staff had to go out there, and it was frightening. But child welfare didn't stop with the pandemic.
No, it didn't.
No.
The interest and the need, both. Are the people who work for you are the same people who work for the city?
No.
I don't mean exactly the same, but I mean trained and...
Yeah, well, we often say that agencies like JCCA train the workforce, and then they go to the city where they get better pay and a pension. And that is true with hospitals as well. We train people and they go to hospitals. It's not unlike the Legal Aid Society, where the majority of lawyers come in for a few years and learn critical skills and then leverage those skills to go someplace else. I think it's a reality of our workforce and something it's up to us to work with and figure out how to really supervise carefully and effectively, and have those supervisors also supervised and managed.
What makes people want to devote their working life to something like this, children's welfare?
So I think there are a number of factors. I think that some people do it because they've had life experience. More and more these days, we hire people at JCCA who have actually been in the foster care system or have parents who have fostered young people. And I think the J in JCCA is Jewish. And I think that people come to us, most are not Jewish, but come to us to work because they feel like the organization is part of a calling, and that they actually feel some commitment to bettering the lives of kids and families that are struggling mightily.
Did you have a religious education?
I did not. I mean, I was bar mitzvahed, so I should say that. I did grow up, and I think this is why I do this work, with a father who was separated from his mother after his dad's death during the Holocaust. And I think that my father's experiences, particularly being put on a train and saying goodbye to his mother, not knowing if he'd ever see her again, and then years of really deprivation when he was about 11, 12 to 16, was dramatic and had a really dramatic effect on myself and my brother, and probably is the reason I do this, because many of the young people that we support at JCCA are kids that have had family separation and trauma that is misunderstood. And so I think that my story is not dissimilar to a lot of people that come to child welfare work because they feel a real need to try to make things better for kids.
I grew up in a very reform religious background, but I always wanted to make the world a better place. I always wanted to help people.
And you have. There's no question about it.
And it's so amazing to me that it's really, in a funny way, a characteristic of the religion that I have.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yes. And it's most religions, right?
Yeah. Right.
Religions generally want people to appreciate what they have and give to others that don't. I mean, JCCA is repair the world child by child. That is our tagline. So under JCCA, it says repair the world child by child. And I feel like our staff come to work with that in mind and care deeply. You know, whatever struggles we have with our workforce, the people that come to work in this area are deeply committed.
What's your next important goal that you want to achieve?
At JCCA? We were founded in 1822, so we have recently entered our 3rd century. And my hope is that we will really work hard to provide community-based mental health, behavioral health services to families when they have their child has one adverse childhood experience. So the ACEs studies show that the more adverse childhood experiences you accumulate, the more challenging your adult life will be, particularly health-wise. And so
What's an adverse experience?
there are 10 of them. You can go Google ACEs
really?
and you can take the test yourself. It's what happened to you before you're 18. And so parental separation, the death of a parent, child neglect, domestic violence. There's a litany of 10 of them. And I want to say Permanente, Kaiser Permanente did a study related originally, I believe, to obesity that has been adapted to, like, why do people become obese? And it was expanded to demonstrate that adverse childhood experiences have a lot to do with why people develop heart disease, why people develop all manner of adult physical ailments and mental health ailments as well. And so that study, to me, informs us about what should be next for JCCA. We should be thinking about how to address issues in domestic violence shelters, in the family court where there's a custody battle, all these areas where kids are definitely having at least one adverse childhood experience. And then, moving into that community, JCCA has 3 Article 31 clinics where we provide community mental health services, and be there so that families don't have to accumulate 4 or 5 adverse childhood experiences before they get help.
1, right?
I prefer none, but yeah, I think when there is one, we should be responding.
So we've come to the end of this program.
Oh, okay.
And it's so heartwarming to hear that there are people there to help and to change what's happening and to respond to the needs. And I just wish you much good fortune and congratulations.
Well, it's a pleasure being here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. CUNY TV now has an app. Downloading the app will let you watch any show, including mine, at your convenience.